It's strange, you know? Sometimes I still just stop. Mid-sentence, mid-task. And it all just hits me again, this profound confusion. My wife, Sarah, left me. And not just me, but our 2 kids. For some guy, a barista, barely 26. And the wildest part? She honestly believed she was doing the right thing. Because some online group, some collective, told her it was brave. Empowering. I'm David. I'm 41. And I swear, I never thought I'd be that guy. Sitting alone in what used to be our bedroom, just trying to piece together when exactly my life, our marriage, turned into some kind of radical self-love manifesto on social media. But that's where we ended up. Sarah didn't leave because she fell out of love. I don't think so, anyway. She left because she'd gotten this idea in her head that being a mother, being a wife, that she'd lost herself. And apparently, finding herself meant just abandoning everything we'd built together, brick by brick, for 13 years. I'm not looking for sympathy here. I'm really not. And I'm certainly not here to trash her. I need to get this out. Because what happened over the last couple of years has been so surreal, so utterly unbelievable, that sometimes I wake up and I still think it was all just some kind of twisted dream. We had 2 kids, Lily and Ethan, they're 11 and 13 now. We had a house in a good neighborhood, stable jobs. The kind of life that isn't exactly thrilling at dinner parties, but it felt solid. Real. I'm a project manager for a construction firm. Sarah worked part-time as a graphic designer from home. We had our routine, just like any other family. I honestly thought we were fine. Not fireworks every single day, maybe, but fine. You know? That comfortable, quiet kind of fine that comes with years of truly knowing someone. Then, about 2 years ago, Sarah started saying she didn't know who she was anymore. And at first, I just figured, okay, stress. Maybe she needed a hobby. So, I suggested she take up painting again. She used to love it in college. She just stared at me. Like I'd suggested she learn to juggle chainsaws. Said I didn't get it. That she wasn't talking about hobbies. She was talking about her identity. And she was right. I didn't get it. But I tried. I really tried to listen, to be supportive. Because that's what you do for your partner when they're struggling. She started spending more and more time online. Joining these women's groups on social media, reading articles about feminine awakening and patriarchal structures. And look, I am all for women supporting women. Absolutely. But something about these groups felt different. They weren't talking about careers, or equal pay, or anything tangible. They were talking about how marriage itself was a trap. How motherhood was a societal construct designed to suppress female potential. How women needed to choose themselves first, always. Sarah started using phrases that sounded like they'd come straight out of a self-help book written by someone who had never actually dealt with real-life responsibilities. She'd say she was reclaiming her narrative, refusing to be defined by roles others gave her. And every time I tried to talk to her about it, to understand, she'd tell me I was being dismissive of her journey. The real turning point, I think, was when she joined what she called a feminist self-healing collective. Which, as far as I could tell, was 6 women who met twice a week at a coffee shop downtown. And they just talked about how oppressed they were. I want to be really clear here, I am not mocking feminism or women's issues. But this group? It felt more like a support group for people who just wanted permission to blow up their lives. One of the women in the group had recently left her husband. Another was separated. And they all seemed to just feed off each other's stories about liberation and finding themselves. Like they were competing to see who could reject traditional life the hardest. Have you ever just watched someone you love getting pulled into something, and you feel completely, utterly powerless to stop it? That's what those months felt like. Sarah would come home from these meetings absolutely glowing. This kind of manic energy. Talking about breakthroughs and realizations. And when I'd ask what specifically she was realizing, she'd just get vague. Say she was learning that she mattered. Which, it always confused me. Because I never thought she didn't matter. The kids started noticing. Lily and Ethan. Mom was physically there, but emotionally, she was just somewhere else. Lily asked me one night why Mommy seemed sad all the time. That just broke my heart. Because Sarah wasn't sad. She was just so caught up in this idea of self-discovery that she'd stopped actually seeing the people right in front of her. Then Milo entered the picture. And honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. He was 26, worked at that same coffee shop where her group met. Had that whole artist vibe, man bun, vintage band shirts. Sarah mentioned him a few times, said he understood her creative side. I wasn't worried. I trusted her. And also, Milo seemed like exactly the kind of guy who would never want the responsibility of a real relationship. But I underestimated how attractive the idea of starting over can be when someone keeps telling you that your current life is holding you back. Sarah started staying out later after her group meetings. Said she was networking with other designers. And I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We had 13 years of marriage. 2 kids. A mortgage. You don't just throw that away for a barista with a philosophy degree. But she was pulling away in ways that became impossible to ignore. She stopped asking about my day. Stopped caring about the kids' school events. Stopped being present at dinner. And when I finally confronted her about it, really pushed her, she just said, I can't keep living for everyone else. I need to live for me. I remember standing in our kitchen. Just, frozen. Thinking, taking care of your family isn't living for everyone else. It's just called being an adult. But I didn't say it. I could see she was looking for a fight. Looking for a reason to paint me as the bad guy. The night she told me she was leaving, she didn't yell. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She just said, very calmly, I'm choosing myself, David. This isn't about you or the kids. This is about me finally being honest about what I need. And when I asked, what about what our kids need, she said, they'll understand eventually. They'll thank me for showing them what it means to be authentic. I just stood there, watching her pack a suitcase. This sick feeling in my stomach. Not angry yet. Just this overwhelming confusion about how we'd even gotten here. She moved in with Milo 3 days later. Didn't even get her own place. Just went straight from our family home to his tiny apartment above a record store. The kids asked where Mommy went. I told them she needed some time to figure things out. Which was the truth, even if it wasn't the whole truth. And Ethan, who was 11 then, asked, is it because of us? And I had to sit them both down. Explain that sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense, but it's never the kids' fault. Never, ever. Sarah came by the next week to see the kids. And she brought Milo with her. That felt like such a slap in the face. But I kept my cool. The kids were watching. She introduced him as her friend who was helping her through a difficult time. Like I was the difficult time she needed help getting through. I watched Lily's face when she saw this stranger in our driveway. And I saw the exact moment she understood that everything had changed. That Mom wasn't coming back. That this was the new reality. Sarah started posting on social media. Long captions about breaking free from societal expectations, choosing radical self-love. And her friends from the group would comment with praise. So proud of you, Queen. You're glowing. While I was at home, meal prepping for the week, helping with homework, trying to explain to 2 confused kids why their mother chose herself over them. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs I missed. The way she stopped asking about our future together. The way she talked about her life instead of our life. The way she started viewing every family responsibility as a burden instead of just part of being a parent. But in the moment, I kept thinking this was just a phase. That she'd snap out of it once she realized what she was throwing away. I was wrong. She was just getting started. And I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. The first month after Sarah left was the hardest. Not because I missed her, but because I had to become two parents overnight. While pretending everything was going to be okay. I took over the morning routines, the school drop-offs, the homework checks, the doctor appointments, the parent-teacher conferences. All the invisible labor that Sarah used to handle while I was at work. And I realized pretty quickly that I had no idea how much she actually did before she decided none of it mattered anymore. Lily started having nightmares. About her mom forgetting her. Ethan became quiet, withdrawn in a way that truly scared me. And I spent my evenings researching child psychologists while meal prepping lunches for the week. Because there literally weren't enough hours in the day. Sarah would text occasionally. How are the kids? Messages about how she was thinking of them, sending them love and light. Which sounds nice, until you realize that love and light doesn't help with math homework. Or explain why mommy isn't coming to the school play. She'd schedule visits, then cancel last minute. Because Milo had surprised her with a weekend trip. Or because the self-healing group was having a special workshop. And every time I had to tell the kids that mom couldn't make it again, I watched a little piece of their hope die. Something in me said I needed to start keeping track of everything. Not because I was planning legal action yet. But some instinct just knew. This might matter later. So I kept a simple calendar. Marked which day she was supposed to visit, and which day she actually came. I saved every text where she canceled or rescheduled. I noted every time the kids asked about her, and what I told them. Just facts. No editorial. Just the truth of what was happening. Then, about 6 months after she left, Sarah called me. She sounded more excited than I'd heard her in years. Talking fast about new beginnings and symbolic fresh starts. And then she told me. She was pregnant. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Because I was doing the math in my head. Realizing she'd gotten pregnant pretty quickly after moving in with Milo. And when I finally asked if she was sure about this, she said, "This baby is a symbol of my rebirth, David. This is me creating life on my own terms." I wanted to point out that she already created life on her own terms twice. And those kids were currently asking me every night when she'd come home. But I just congratulated her. And hung up. The self-healing group threw her a celebration. Posting pictures on social media of Sarah, glowing in a flower crown. Talking about divine feminine energy and the power of choosing yourself. And I'm looking at these photos, thinking about how Lily cried herself to sleep the night before because she thought mom didn't love her anymore. Would you keep supporting someone who celebrated their new life while ignoring the kids they left behind? Because her so-called support system sure did. Milo started pulling away around her 7th month. You could see it in the photos Sarah posted. He was there, but not really there. Standing slightly apart. Checking his phone. Looking like a guy who just realized that ideals about freedom and self-discovery don't pay for diapers. Sarah started posting less about liberation and more about the challenges of preparing for a baby. Looking for recommendations for affordable cribs. Asking if anyone knew of part-time, work-from-home jobs that were pregnancy-friendly. And the self-healing group? They went mysteriously quiet in the comments. Nobody was offering to help with baby supplies. Nobody was volunteering to throw a baby shower. They were all very supportive of the idea of her choices, but apparently not the reality of them. I should have felt vindicated. But I just felt tired. Watching this woman I'd spent 13 years with slowly realized that Instagram feminism doesn't keep the lights on. She reached out to her parents, asking for financial help. And they told her they'd be happy to help their grandchildren, meaning Lily and Ethan, but they weren't going to fund her new life with a guy barely older than their nephew. Which Sarah took as a betrayal. Posted a long thing about how society punishes women for being honest. The baby was born. A boy. And suddenly, Sarah was dealing with the reality of a newborn in a tiny apartment. With a partner who had checked out emotionally. And a support system that had evaporated the moment real help was needed. She started calling me more often. Not to talk about our kids, but to vent about Milo. About how he wasn't stepping up. About how she felt alone. About how this wasn't what she thought it would be. And I'd listen. Because that's what I do. But I never offered solutions. These weren't my problems to solve anymore. My lawyer had been telling me for months that I should file for primary custody. That I had more than enough documentation showing I was the stable parent. But I kept hesitating. I didn't want to be the guy who weaponized the courts against his ex. I wanted Sarah to step up on her own. But she wasn't stepping up. She was barely keeping her head above water. Missing more visits. Showing up late when she did come. Looking exhausted and distracted. And my kids were getting anxious every time they were supposed to see her, because they never knew if she'd actually show. I finally filed for primary custody 14 months after she left. Not out of revenge. Out of necessity. Because my kids needed stability. And they weren't getting it from her. The court process was surprisingly straightforward. My lawyer presented the calendar of missed visits. The text showing cancellations. The documentation of me handling every single aspect of Lily and Ethan's lives while Sarah was focused on her journey. And her lawyer didn't have much to counter with, except arguments about how she was going through a transitional period and deserved grace. The judge looked at the evidence. Looked at Sarah. Asked her directly how many of her scheduled visits she'd actually kept in the past 6 months. And when she couldn't give a straight answer, I saw his expression change. He granted me primary physical custody, with Sarah getting visitation every other weekend. And she walked out of that courtroom looking like she'd been slapped. She didn't talk to me for 2 weeks after the hearing. And when she finally did, it wasn't to apologize. Or to ask about the kids. It was to tell me, "You're punishing me for choosing myself, David. You're using the system to hurt me." And I remember thinking, I didn't need to use anything to hurt her. She was doing that perfectly well on her own. Milo left a month after the custody hearing. Just moved out while she was at work. Left a note saying he couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't be responsible for a kid that wasn't his. And a girlfriend who was drowning in regret disguised as empowerment. And Sarah called me. Sobbing. Actually sobbing for the first time since this whole thing started. She asked if she could come over. Said she needed to talk. And I told her, we can talk about the kids anytime. But if you need someone to process your relationship drama with, that's not my job anymore. The self-healing group had completely disappeared by this point. No more meetings. No more supportive comments. Just silence from the women who had cheered her on when she was blowing up her life. But had nothing to offer when she was living in the wreckage. Here's what I learned from watching this unfold: when people build their identity around rejecting responsibility, they attract others doing the same thing. And when reality hits, that whole support system just collapses. Because it was never built on anything real to begin with. It was built on validating each other's avoidance. Sarah moved into a cheaper apartment. Started working full-time again out of necessity. Found childcare for her baby. And slowly, started trying to rebuild some kind of relationship with our kids. showing up more consistently for her visits, actually asking them about school and their lives. But the damage was done. Lily was polite but distant. Ethan was guarded. And they both knew, on some level, that I was the one who'd been there all along. I started seeing someone new around this time. A woman I met through work named Elena. Nothing serious at first. Just coffee and conversations with someone who didn't come with years of baggage. And it felt strange to laugh again. To have an adult conversation that wasn't about custody schedules or missed visits. I didn't tell Sarah. And I definitely didn't introduce Elena to the kids for months. Because I wanted to be sure. Wanted to protect them from any more instability. Then Sarah found out I was seeing someone. I don't know how. Maybe mutual friends, maybe she saw something on social media. And that's when she reached out. Asking to meet. We need to talk, David, please. I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to hear me out. I looked at that text for a long time before responding. And I realized something important. She still didn't get it. Even after everything, she still thought this was about her. I met Sarah at a coffee shop 6 months after Milo left. Neutral territory. Because I didn't want her in my house, and she didn't want me in hers. And when she walked in, looking tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sympathy. Just this flat acknowledgement that we were strangers now. She ordered a tea she didn't drink. And spent the first 5 minutes apologizing. Not for leaving. Not for abandoning our kids. But for how things had turned out. Like our marriage ending was some kind of natural disaster nobody could have prevented, instead of a series of choices she made deliberately. She told me she'd been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of self-reflection. And she wanted me to understand that she never meant to hurt anyone. She was just trying to be true to herself. And I sat there, thinking about all the times Lily asked if Mommy still loved her, while Sarah was being true to herself with a 26-year-old. She said Milo leaving had been a wake-up call. That she realized she'd been chasing an idea instead of dealing with reality. And she wanted to do better, be better for our kids. Wanted me to see that she was trying. I told her I could see she was trying. And that was good. For the kids. That consistent visits and actual presence in their lives was what mattered. And she looked at me like I'd missed the whole point of everything she'd just said. Then she got to the real reason she wanted to meet. Asking if there was any chance. Any possibility. That we could try again. Not jump back into marriage, obviously. But maybe start over. Take things slow. See if we could rebuild what we had. I stared at her for a long moment. Trying to figure out if she was serious. And when I realized she was, I asked her why she thought I would want that. Why she thought 13 years of marriage and 2 kids wasn't enough of a try. Why she thought I'd be interested in being her backup plan now that her adventure had failed. She got defensive immediately. Said it wasn't like that. Said she wasn't asking me to rescue her. She was asking if I still believed in our family. And I told her, I believe in our kids, Sarah. I believe in being their father. But you and me? That ended when you chose yourself. She started crying then. Not the manipulative kind of crying, but the genuine kind. The kind that comes from finally understanding you can't undo what you've done. And she said I was being heartless. That I was punishing her for being honest about her needs. I leaned back and said I wasn't punishing her for anything. I was just not volunteering to be hurt again. And there's a difference between punishment and boundaries. She brought up the kids again. Saying they deserved to have both parents together. That an intact family was better for them. And I reminded her that she was the one who decided an intact family wasn't enough. That she was the one who chose to blow everything up because some women on the internet told her she was oppressed. Sarah switched tactics then. Trying a different approach. Saying the courts were unfair to mothers. That the system was designed to punish women who didn't fit traditional roles. That I had used my privilege to take her children away. I let her finish. And then, very calmly, I laid out the facts. How she'd missed over 60% of her scheduled visits in the first 6 months. How she'd cancelled on the kids' birthdays. How she'd been so focused on her rebirth that she forgot she already had 2 humans who needed her. And I asked her which part of that was the system being unfair versus her just not showing up. She didn't have an answer for that. She just sat there, looking at me like I was supposed to absolve her. Supposed to tell her it was okay, and we all make mistakes, and let's just move forward. But I was done absolving her. The custody arrangement stayed as it was. And over the next few months, Sarah did actually start showing up more consistently. Spending time with the kids. Asking about their lives. Being present in the small ways that matter. But she never stopped looking at me like I was the villain in her story. I introduced Elena to the kids around this time. 8 months into our relationship. And they liked her. Because she didn't try too hard. Didn't try to be their mom. Just treated them like people and let relationships develop naturally. Elena was a civil engineer. Steady. Calm. Everything Sarah wasn't. And she understood that the kids came first. That building trust takes time. That you can't rush healing. Sarah found out. And sent me a long text about how I was replacing her. How I was showing our kids that people are disposable. How I was modeling unhealthy relationship patterns. And I didn't respond. Because engaging with that level of projection felt pointless. The kids adjusted. Slowly. They had their routines with me. Their scheduled time with Sarah. Their lives moved forward the way kids' lives do, with remarkable resilience, when given stability. Lily started playing soccer again. Something she'd quit when Sarah left because she was too anxious to focus on anything. And watching her score her first goal, with me and Elena cheering from the sidelines, felt like a small victory against everything that had tried to break her. Ethan started opening up more. Talking about his feelings. Processing what had happened with the help of the therapist I'd found. And he told me one day that he understood now. That mom's choices weren't about him. Weren't about any of us. They were about her. And I was so proud of him for figuring that out at 13 years old. Even though it broke my heart that he had to. Sarah continued her narrative on social media. Posting about the challenges of co-parenting with a difficult ex. About how society punishes women for choosing authenticity. About bias in family courts. And her few remaining friends from the self-healing group would comment supportive things, having no idea what actually happened. She never posted about the visits she missed. Never mentioned why custody was awarded the way it was. Never acknowledged that she'd chosen a man she barely knew over her own children. It was always about what was done to her. Never what she had done. I ran into one of her friends from that group at the grocery store once. And she gave me this look. Pure judgment. Like I was the man who crushed a woman's spirit. And I wanted to tell her the whole story. But I didn't. Because people believe what they want to.